Hey, it's Jordan Chariton with Status Coup. It is 7:55 in the morning, East Coast time, and there is unfortunate breaking news that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been arrested at the Ecuador embassy in London and being arrested based off of U.S. extradition requests. I will show you the pretty shameful images of him being dragged out of the embassy that he's been in since 2012. Here we go.
No worries.
So there is Julian Assange. You hear him saying, UK must resist, UK must resist this request from the Trump administration. Let me show you his attorney. Confirmed, Assange has been arrested not just for breach of bail conditions, but also in relation to a U.S. extradition request. The U.S. warrant was issued in December 2017 and is for conspiracy with Chelsea Manning in early 2010. So it seems that their cover story, and that's what this is, a cover story for arresting Julian Assange and requesting him to be extradited to the U.S. is basically calling him a conspirator with former soldier Chelsea Manning, who obviously released the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs years ago. Let me read you this, because Chelsea Manning, for the second time, is sitting in solitary confinement for refusing now, this time, to testify against WikiLeaks. The judge has held Chelsea Manning in contempt, and she's being detained after refusing to testify about her disclosure of military and diplomatic secrets to WikiLeaks in 2010, her lawyer says. The former Army intelligence analyst, who served about 7 years in prison for the massive leak, objected to the questioning in grand jury appearance Wednesday in Virginia. Her testimony appears to be part of a continued effort by federal prosecutors investigating the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. Quote, imprisoning me for my refusal to answer questions only subjects me to additional punishment for my repeatedly stated ethical objections to the grand jury system, Manning said. Manning's attorney said she would likely appeal the order by Judge Claude Hilton, and that Manning could be held behind bars for the term of the grand jury, but no longer than 18 months. Asked if Manning was prepared to stay in prison for 18 months, Meltzer Cohen said, "We are not there yet." As everybody knows, Chelsea has tremendous courage. Our primary concern at this point is her health while she is confined, and we will be paying close attention, Meltzer Cohen told reporters. It has always been our intent and hope for her to testify and comply with the valid court order and valid grand jury investigation. Miss Manning could change her mind right now and do so. It is her choice, the government's attorney said. Now, formerly Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning obviously released classified cables and documents, basically intel reports, internal U.S. intelligence reports from the Afghanistan war as well as the Iraq war. She did this because she saw with her own eyes when she had a break from her service, a short break, the total, basically ignorant state United States citizens were on the war crimes that the U.S. was perpetrating in Iraq and Afghanistan. And Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, as they have done time and time again, was the source for Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning at the time, a whistleblower to deliver those documents to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks released them. WikiLeaks, as far as I know, there's no evidence of them working with Chelsea Manning to get those classified documents. WikiLeaks received them, which really makes WikiLeaks no different than the New York Times in the past and many other news platforms that have received classified, damning documents that show U.S. war crimes and high crimes and human rights violations and released them. So basically, it seems the United States cover story for arresting, extraditing, getting Julian Assange extradited to the U.S. is that he conspired with Chelsea Manning. Evidence of this? We'll tell you later. Will there be evidence? Maybe. Will that evidence be concocted and trumped up? Most likely, because it's the United States we're talking about. Let me read you more. Oh, I want to show you this clip because already the narrative is being set that this arrest might have something to do with Assange and the 2016 election and Russian hacking and blah, 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 blah. The corporate media is already in high drive, trying to paint this as somehow linked, maybe so, to the 2016 election and Russian quote-unquote hacking.
Well, Gail, Assange is suspected of aiding a Russian-backed campaign to leak emails from the Democratic Party, including emails from President Trump's 2016 rival Hillary Clinton. And in July, the Justice Department charged 12 Russian operatives with hacking into those computers. The U.S. government says at least one of those operatives was in contact with WikiLeaks. Assange and WikiLeaks have been a thorn in the side of U.S. law enforcement prior to the 2016 election. They've released to CIA and military documents throughout the years, including leaking classified documents from former military intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning.
So, Paula, does that mean that Assange himself will face charges in the United States?
Yes, Assange's lawyer just confirmed he has been arrested on a U.S. extradition request. Well, there are no current indictments, public indictments against Assange. Back in November 2018, an error in a separate Justice Department case suggested there could be charges under seal. The prosecutor in that case wrote the warrant would need to stay under seal until Assange could no longer evade arrest. The U.S. and the U.K. have a treaty that actually allows for pretty easy extradition, but this still could be a lengthy process, one that Assange is expected to fight, and we're unlikely to see Assange on U.S. soil anytime soon.
Oh, interesting. All right, Paula, thank you so much.
Well, if that were true, if he was being arrested and possible ties to the U.S. election and quote-unquote assisting Russia with hacking emails or coordinating with Russia, then why is this also true from my interview with Rolling Stone's Matt Taibbi?
No, I'm going to break a little news on your segment here. I've been working on a story. I haven't done it. But one of the reasons that that my alarm bells went off about the Mueller probe is when I found out that Mueller had made no attempt to take a statement from anybody at WikiLeaks or from Assange at any point in this inquiry. They never reached out, no American official. There was at one point a brief effort by a congressional inquiry to talk about interviewing Assange, but when he asked about whether there would be immunity, he didn't even demand it. He just asked the question. They didn't get back to him about that. But Mueller, despite the fact that Assange is clearly a player in the overall theory of some of his cases, particularly the Roger Stone case, he never attempted to try to nail down exactly what happened there. As an investigator, whether you think the person's going to tell you the truth or not, you would want to get that story on the record, right? Wouldn't you?
Absolutely. He was trying to get an interview with the president pretty much. He worked hard to try to get Trump to meet with him, and obviously he failed. But why wouldn't you do the same thing with Julian Assange?
Exactly. And Julian Assange probably would have given that interview, and he may have had lots to say. He might have had who knows? I mean, I don't think Julian Assange has particularly warm feelings towards Roger Stone or any of those idiots. It might have even helped him make some of those cases. Who knows? But why not do what you would normally do if you were actually engaged in a real search for the truth, right? And to me, their failure to try to even sound out what happened there suggests to me that they were never really interested in getting a full picture of that crucial kind of timeline. Like the story is that Russia hacked the DNC through whatever hook and crook, through the phishing scheme. Guccifer then, through some kind of middleman, gets it to Assange, who in turn leaks it out to the world, which affects the election. That all this is like a conspiracy. It's been thought out. All the different parts understand what they're doing together, but it's not. It hasn't been established, right? Like, and again, and I'm like you. I don't disbelieve it. I think Julian Assange probably has enough negative feelings about Hillary Clinton and about the United States government that, he would probably be capable of doing that. I mean, he's an iconoclastic personality, but what they're doing with him is something I think that's the next step in this process is to try to change attitudes about what happened there, and also to get people to realize the dangers of what's going on here. With the case that they do have against Assange, they're attempting to try to define normal journalistic procedure as espionage, which is like dangerous beyond belief. I mean, this is what I'm talking about the authoritarian movement that this thing has launched. People just do not recognize the significance of what that kind of a case could mean. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I mean, nobody's ever posited his source might very well not be Russia, but that source got it from Russian operatives. I mean, sometimes your source. I mean, you could get you could get documents that are government documents or campaign documents from one source, but they got it from this person who got it from this person. I mean, it's not always a straight line in my experience. I don't know about you, but I just wanted to bring up Assange because I think that listen, is he a perfect person? Could you look at certain things? Of course, but I think they have been wrongly vilified, and I think the same people like Rachel Maddow, who loved WikiLeaks many years ago, when MSNBC was still like lean forwarding and like a little bit more sane. Now he's an evil man. I want to end.
Can I just about that quickly?
Sure.
It drives me crazy because the Assange situation speaks so much to what will happen to ordinary journalists. It's astonishing to me that reporters don't recognize that they should be massively invested in what happens to Assange, and also the whole notion that he is a Russian state actor. There's no pushback at all to that idea in the press these days. Whereas nothing about this guy's personality in the past suggests that he's ever wanted to get into bed with any country, except for like a relationship of convenience temporarily, right? So I think that's a total misread of what happened there. It may very well have come from Russia, but I just think I'd like to see that story fleshed out a lot more.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you from a kind of more of a.
So a few things on that. And this was only 3 weeks ago. We spoke after William Barr, the Attorney General, came out with his statement on what the Mueller report found and did not find. So, number one, in what objective, keyword objective, world does Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller not interview Julian Assange or WikiLeaks? They do have Skype. They do have teleconference capability. He could still be under oath. In what world would he not interview him if he had evidence that Assange either worked with the Russian government to get those emails, or, that Russia was his source, or that Assange and WikiLeaks somehow directly coordinated with the Trump campaign? We're not talking about not indicting him We're talking about not even speaking with him. But you won't hear what Matt Taibbi reported to me on CNN today, or MSNBC, or in the New York Times, or in the Washington Post, because it will destroy that narrative. It will destroy that narrative. Not going to hear it. But you will hear propaganda and narratives and fairy tales that Assange is a Russian agent, that WikiLeaks is now a Russian state actor, when Mueller never even spoke with the man or WikiLeaks. They were not indicted related to the 2016 election. We'll see what the Mueller report says and if it has other information. But as far as we know, the only communication WikiLeaks had directly with anyone linked to Donald Trump was Roger Stone. And that communication was telling him to stop misstating and mischaracterizing their communications and stop making it seem like they're communicating because they weren't. That's the only proof. If Mueller had the goods, or there was goods on WikiLeaks related to 2016 Russia hacking, he would have been spoken to, he would have been indicted. So let's put that aside. So then you simply have the United States is indicting a man, a journalist. These same people now putting out these narratives, well, there's a debate whether he's a journalist or not. Well, Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, many on CNN, many in the New York Times, who, by the way, the New York Times has worked with WikiLeaks at times, releasing information critical of the deep state. Now, all of a sudden, they're silent because they used to love WikiLeaks. When WikiLeaks was releasing information that was horrible for the Bush administration, MSNBC loved it. So did CNN. So did the New York Times. When the information, part of journalism is the right to know, informing the public because the public has a right to know. That's what journalism used to be. It was a public service. Journalists were public servants. And journalistic outfits it was baked into the cake that journalist outlets were going to lose money for networks like CBS, NBC, ABC. It was called a loss leader, but it was part of the brand of those networks to have information services. And the networks made it up on entertainment and sports and other things. But what you have here is WikiLeaks, who has a 100% accuracy record. 100%. Now, a concoction that they conspired with Chelsea Manning to, leak classified documents. Then, should the New York Times be arrested for the Pentagon Papers? And Daniel Ellsbury? Should the New York Times be arrested? Should the New York Times journalists, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, should they all be arrested because they've reported on what WikiLeaks has leaked? War crimes in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other countries. And by the way, this is the former president of Ecuador on this. The greatest traitor in Ecuadorian and Latin American history, Lenin Moreno, allowed the British police to enter our embassy in London to arrest Assange. Moreno is a corrupt man, but what he has done is a crime that humanity will never forget. Edward Snowden. Images of Ecuador's ambassador inviting the UK's secret police into the embassy to drag a publisher of, like it or not, award-winning journalism out of the building are going to end up in the history books. Assange's critics may cheer, but this is a dark moment for press freedom. And by the way, the current president of Ecuador, because Ecuador's stance against Julian Assange changed when the new Ecuadorian president came in, well, he had personal reasons for wanting to get Julian Assange out of there. Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno is blaming WikiLeaks for recent allegations of corruption in local outlets and the publication of family photos to social media. In a speech to the Ecuadorian Broadcasting Association on Tuesday, Moreno accused WikiLeaks of intercepting phone calls and private conversations, as well as photos of my bedroom, what I eat, and how my wife and daughters and friends dance. Moreno provided no evidence, of course not, but the speech reflected ongoing tension between WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange and his hosts at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. WikiLeaks, in a statement, called Moreno's charges completely bogus, saying it reported on the accusations of corruption against the president only after Ecuador's legislature investigated the issue. Quote, if President Moreno wants to illegally terminate a refugee's publisher's asylum to cover up an offshore corruption scandal, history will not be kind. Well, seems that's what's going on here. And by the way, President Obama, who had the most targeted, aggressive, frankly disgusting campaign against whistleblowers than any president before him, Donald Trump has continued it, his Department of Justice determined they just legally could not charge Julian Assange and WikiLeaks with anything. The Justice Department has all but concluded it will not bring charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange for publishing classified documents because government lawyers said they could not do so without also prosecuting U.S. news organizations and journalists, according to the U.S. officials. This is exactly what I was saying. Why isn't the New York Times being arrested right now if this is what they're doing to Julian Assange? It ain't any different. The official stressed that a formal decision has not been made and a grand jury investigating WikiLeaks remains impaneled, but they said there is little possibility of bringing a case against Assange unless he is implicated in criminal activity other than releasing online top-secret military and diplomatic documents. The Obama administration has charged government employees and contractors who leak classified information, such as former NSA contractor Edward Snowden and former Army intelligence analyst Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, with violations of the Espionage Act. But officials said that although Assange published classified documents, he did not leak them, something they said significantly affects the legal analysis. Quote, the problem the department has always had in investigating Julian Assange is there's no way to prosecute him for publishing information without the same theory being applied to journalists, said former Justice Department spokesman Matthew Miller. And if you're not going to prosecute journalists for publishing classified information, which the department is not, then there's no way to prosecute Assange. I mean, how much clearer can you get? And by the way, that statement kind of like distinguishes and makes it seem like Assange is different than normal journalists. No, he's not. Assange is what actual journalists should be, but the journalists we have in America are basically tools for the CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the whole nine. I mean, frankly, I've been studying up a lot more on JFK's assassination. I've been watching documentaries, movies. I just finished Oliver Stone's 1991 movie. You know what? The bottom line is this. You know, let's call it what it is. JFK was not assassinated by a lone gunman, okay? The video speaks. The video shows you what happened. There were multiple shooters. He was shot from the front. The magic bullet theory is magical because it's not possible. And, you know, I won't go off at a tangent, but the same principle applies. JFK was not just desiring to end the Cold War in the 1960s. JFK was not just desiring to get out of Vietnam, he was setting plans in motion to do so. He had a plan for peace. He could see through the Pentagon and the generals and the CIA and their warmongering and coup attempts. And he could see through and see that it was hyperbolic propaganda, overestimating and inflating the threat of, you know, communism and Russia and, communism spreading in Vietnam and all these things. He realized that before he became president, he, along with the American public, were lied to about, Russia is very close to matching us as far as nuclear warheads. Why is this connected to this? Because there was a conspiracy among CIA and other intelligence agencies to assassinate John F. Kennedy. You don't have to believe me, do the research. Look at the video. Read the book. Read books. Read the pathology reports. Read about the forensics. But the point is, they killed him because he was going to end the military-industrial complex while it was still early enough to do it. Remember, it was in 1963. Really, that buildup in the military-industrial complex was only about a decade or so old when Eisenhower and Truman started building up nukes and the military apparatus. Why is this connected to Julian Assange? Well, they might not be assassinating him, but what they're doing right now, Julian Assange, who at the end of the day, his release of war crimes and information about that is towards peace, is towards exposing the military-industrial complex, is towards exposing war crimes, is towards exposing lies. They're basically killing him. Make no mistake, if Julian Assange gets extradited to the U.S., it will be a show trial. If it gets one, he will either be locked up in solitary confinement for the rest of his life, or they might even seek the death penalty. I'm not fear-mongering, but that is a possibility. So it might not be a grisly, assassination with the top down in the limousine, but this is a death sentence for Julian Assange. And this is an urgent emergency situation that all independent media should be covering. If I had the funding, I would go there right now. Statuscoup.com/join. Statuscoup.com/join. We're 13 paid members away from 300 members. So that's statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. I'll have more on the arrest of Julian Assange throughout today as more updates become available.